Am I in the wrong for telling my sister-in-law that I won't change my 4-month-old daughter's name for her? I gave birth to my daughter Ember 4 months ago. My husband and I both loved her name and that's how it was chosen. We announced the day that she was born and nobody said anything negative or gave a reason for us not to use it then. I say this because 3 days ago, my sister-in-law, who is married to my brother, sat me down and asked me to change the name because it's the name of her stillborn daughter that she had with her ex-husband 7 years ago. She told me that she tried to keep it quiet, but she couldn't let me keep calling my daughter Ember because it's such a painful reminder for her. She told me that she really feels like we should change her name. I gently told my sister-in-law that my daughter was 4 months old and her name is on the birth certificate and it would cost us to change it, so we will not. She told me that she tried so hard not to say anything and the fact that she did eventually break and bring it up should show how hard this is for her and make me more willing to change the name for her sake. I told my husband about it afterward and he felt the same way I did. He told me it seemed like a weak excuse to wait 4, almost 5 months to tell us, when she had the chance long before this. My brother found out about the conversation with his wife and he reached out and told me that she mentioned it to him 2 months ago and she was battling with asking us to change the name since. But he understands why I said no and supports the decision. Yesterday, she reached out to me again and asked if we had decided on a new name yet, and I told her that my answer is still no. And she asked why, and I told her that she waited 4 months to tell us. She became very angry very quickly and told me that if she had lost my niece, my response would be different and I should see this as her losing my niece because she would have been if she were alive. She also told me that my daughter is going to grow up always hearing about the cousin that I gave her the same name as and that I should reconsider before burdening my daughter with that. She told me that a good person with good morals would. I should also mention, I knew that she had suffered pregnancy loss, but it was implied that she had a miscarriage far earlier and not a stillborn child. I never knew the name or the sex, and I never even heard her use the name of her daughter. So, am I in the wrong?
I caused my boyfriend's affair partner to miscarry. It's been over a year and I still don't feel guilty. To put it in a nutshell, I was with my then boyfriend for 4.5 years. He was seeing his affair partner for the last 2. We accidentally got pregnant and I had given birth. I still can't wrap my head around why she showed up to my house with photos and messages and pictures of her and my ex-boyfriend sleeping together. I did thank her for informing me of what had been going on and asked her to leave, which she refused and started a triad of demands and accusations, to which I pointed at the nanny cameras in my house and explicitly said if she didn't leave, I'd call the police, which I did, but before they turned up, she pushed me and I defended myself. I thought the beating was enough of a punishment and a warning to leave me and my son alone. But what a mistake that was. I was messaged insistently on Facebook, and through Facebook, I learned from my beating she had miscarried, and I couldn't help but laugh as she had told me to get rid of my son. I guess God chose which son to keep and which to get rid of. I hadn't heard from my boyfriend from that day forward. He didn't show up to court, but did send myself a message after saying he made a big mistake and couldn't face either of us, but not an apology. From the day I was awarded full custody, I packed mine and my son's things and moved to Asia to live with my father. We've been living a good life, but my son's father won't stop trying to contact me and move back to my previous area. He has no idea where I am, but he's currently with her sister as his now ex-affair partner has been disowned from her family and kicked out. I don't feel guilty. I feel like she got what she deserved. What goes around comes around. My boyfriend's sister is really obsessed with him. He's taking her on holiday and I don't know how to convince him it is super weird. I have been dating my boyfriend Mike for just under 18 months. Our relationship has become really serious. We have even started to discuss things like marriage, children, etc. We moved from England to Wales about 6 months ago because I got a job opportunity that required us to relocate. He was able to convert to working from home, so has stayed employed by his old company. We now live about 70 miles away from our hometown. I'm kidding, I gotta stop. We now live about 70 miles away from our hometown. Because it's so far, we rarely visit home. Maybe once every 6 weeks or so. We visit, we stay with Mike's parents, and every time we go, his sister is incredibly obsessed with Mike and won't leave him alone. It's to the point where it's really weird and almost like she has some kind of romantic feelings for him. I brought this up to Mike and he says I'm being crazy, but I'm not. For example, she'll snuggle up to him on a sofa, so I have to sit somewhere else. She'll ask for him to take her shopping to places that I don't like. She'll make him take her to restaurants and they'll have a fancy meal together. It is so weird how she treats him like a boyfriend. Oh my God. God, please, to make this woman not sound as bitter as she sounds, please tell me this child is above the age of 18, because then it'll be a little weird. But if she's a child, then man, you got problems. They have a holiday to Spain booked for the summer holiday to the town where Mike grew up. They booked this before we were dating, but it's just them two going and it makes me feel extremely uncomfortable. I first asked him to change the booking so I can come along as well. He said he contacted the travel agents, but they said they weren't able to change the bookings anymore and that they couldn't book a separate package for me because the hotel was booked up. Yesterday I told him that it was really weird that he wants to spend 2 weeks alone with her in a foreign country, and when I said this to him, he blew up at me and kicked me out of the house. Like genuinely kicked me out of the house for just questioning him about this, which has made me feel it's even more weird than I thought. We ended up having a huge argument, like the biggest we've ever had. And now I'm considering booking a separate hotel nearby the one they're staying at just so I can keep an eye on her. I have been texting him and ringing him and he hasn't answered or responded to me at all. I don't understand how he doesn't see this as weird, especially considering how obsessed she is with him, as I mentioned earlier. It just makes me sick and I don't know what to do. How do I express to him that this is not normal? How do I show him that there is something weird about how his sister treats him? I traveled to a foreign country to get pregnant by a complete stranger with no strings attached. I consider it the best decision I've ever made. 7 years ago, when I was 24 years old, I decided that I wanted to have a child while I was still relatively young and energetic. I had a college degree, made $90,000 a year as a marketing analyst, and had been investing in the stock market since high school, so I knew I could afford to take care of a kid. The problem was that I didn't really want to be with the guy. I've tried the dating thing, but nothing really clicked, and besides, I was always too busy to invest in a relationship. At the same time, I wanted a child, someone I would love forever and who would forever love me. And I didn't want to wait until my biological clock started ticking alarmingly. I considered going to a sperm bank. I could afford it, but I've always hated medical environments and thought it would be creepy to have a child with a faceless man. I thought about getting naturally inseminated by a guy I met online, but I didn't want to deal with child custody issues. Finally, I decided that since I'd already planned a 3-week working vacation to a foreign country, I won't say which for privacy reasons, I might as well try to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Long story short, after asking around and paying some people, I found this guy who was willing to sleep with me. You resorted to prostitution? What? Long story short, after asking around and paying some people, I found this guy who was willing to sleep with me every night for 3 weeks. Since this country has a low cost of living, he was willing to do the deed for a few $100s. He spoke okay English and wore a white button-down shirt, so I think he was a college student who wanted some extra spending money. Didn't really expect it to work, but 2 weeks after I got back, I missed my period and discovered that I was pregnant. The rest of the pregnancy went really well. My mom was a little shocked at first, but she moved in with me after she got used to the idea of becoming a grandma before the age of 50. My dad ditched my mom when I was a baby, so F him. I switched to working from home 6 months into my pregnancy and was even promoted a few months after I gave birth. My son is now 6 years old and the happiest little boy I know. He has a mother and a grandmother who love him to pieces and can give him a good life. When COVID hit and his school went remote, my mom was able to make sure he kept up with his learning. Support systems are so important, everyone. Sometimes you shouldn't be afraid to take the road less traveled. I'm over 30 and I haven't met any guy that I want to date, much less settle down with. But I have a son who I'll love forever and who will forever love me. I'm even thinking of going back to that country to give him a sibling. So funny but wrong. I don't know how to feel. Everyone still thinks that I got knocked up by accident, a youthful mistake while on vacation type of deal. Only I know the truth. My son is not some unfortunate mistake. He's a deliberate miracle. So many of my female friends are hitting their 30s and scrambling to find a guy and or get pregnant. But I'm coasting along happy as a clam. Am I wrong for being annoyed at my fiancé choosing my ring? Background, I am a goldsmith and have been for over 10 years. I work part-time for an independent jeweler as a bench jeweler and also have my own business where I do commissions and repairs. My fiancé openly admits he knows nothing about jewelry but supports my work. My fiancé, 38 male, and I, 36 female, have been together for 5 years. We have discussed marriage at length, and during these conversations, I have said when it comes to engagement rings, because of my job, I know exactly what I want. We also talked about how I want to make it because then I know it is exactly what I want and is also handcrafted and not a cast mount. This is how most rings are made these days, which is fine for most people. It would also be substantially cheaper for me to make it compared to buying one from a jeweler, so I could also have more ring for less money. As this was my literal job, he agreed and said it wasn't traditional but sounded romantic at the same time. On New Year's Eve, he proposed. I, of course, was delighted and said yes. Then he pulled out a ring. I could tell by the box it wasn't a cheap placeholder ring to wear whilst I made the real thing. It's also exactly what I didn't want. A solitaire round diamond on a cast white gold band. That's your style, great. I've made enough of them over the years, but it's everything I didn't want. I didn't say anything on the night, obviously, but the next day I sat him down and asked him why he bought it when we agreed on me making it. He said it was traditional for the man to get the ring and that I should be happy he got me one. He also spent 4 times what it would have cost me to make it. Short version is, I told him while I appreciate him wanting to be romantic and get me a ring, this isn't what I wanted. The cost is disproportionate and we should look at returning it and having me make another ring. He called me ungrateful and I should just be glad he got me a ring and that I would learn to like it. I'm the one wearing it, I need to like it. This is something I tell every person I do a ring commission for, and he knows this. He agreed to return it. Thankfully he can, and let me source the materials and stones to make up the ring, but he's really not happy. So am I the asshole here? Here's the thing. Women have to wear these forever. I get it, you want to be a provider.
Am I in the wrong for not wanting my autistic cousin at my child-free wedding? Next spring, I'm getting married to the love of my life. We have decided that we don't want children at our wedding. Not many of our friends and family have young children, and the ones that do are fine with getting a sitter for the weekend since we gave them a lot of notice. The only ones to put up a fight are my aunt and uncle who have a daughter with autism. She's 20, but will be 21 by the time that my wedding comes around. She is what they call high functioning, which means that she can talk and wash and dress herself. And she has some friends. She graduated from high school a couple years ago and is currently living with her parents while working at a grocery store. Despite her being technically an adult, I just don't see her as such. Every time I talk to her at a family gathering, it's like talking to a child. She's obsessed with toy ponies and Barbie dolls and brings them up at every opportunity. She draws in her notebook constantly and never makes eye contact when talking to me. She doesn't have loud meltdowns like other special needs kids that I met before, but I really don't want to risk her ruining my special day. I told my aunt and uncle that I didn't want her there, and they became very upset. They said that she already saw the invite and knew it was child-free, but because she's an adult, she thought that she's still included. My aunt tried to guilt me by saying that she'd already picked out a dress and gift, but I didn't want to hear it. My fiance says that I'm being an a-hole and that we should let her attend because she's attended other weddings before with no issue. Everyone is making me feel horrible for not treating her like an adult when she doesn't act like one. So, am I in the wrong? Am I in the wrong for grounding my daughter for ruining our vacation? My husband, daughter 15, stepkids 13 and 16, and I just came back from a 2-week vacation. My daughter is very smart and is very good at a lot of things. She's also very competitive. My husband is also very competitive. My daughter started off this vacation by telling my husband that there was Sudoku on the plane and explaining how to play. He didn't know that she's been playing Sudoku for months. She made a bet with him that if she finishes the hardest level first, he'd buy her Wi-Fi for the flight, and if he finished first, she'd share a bed with his younger daughter on the trip. His younger daughter was complaining about sharing with his oldest because she kicks and sleeps in the middle of the bed. She beat him and pestered him until he bought the Wi-Fi. When we got there, she challenged him to races on land and in the pool. She's won medals at state track meets and has been swimming since she was 2. Every day she challenged him to something, win, and then he'd have to buy her something from the resort or local shops. My husband was getting sick of losing, and my stepdaughters were upset that their dad was buying her stuff and not them, so I told my daughter she either couldn't compete with her stepdad or she had to let him win. She decided to tell her stepdad that she wasn't allowed to compete with him anymore because he couldn't handle losing. This made them start to argue, so I told her that if she kept it up, she'd be grounded to the resort for the rest of the trip. A little over a week at this point. She decided to test me, so I stuck to my word, and she was left at the resort while the rest of us went out every day. The vacation was much more enjoyable without her turning everything into a competition, but she told her dad when she got back that she was grounded, and he's mad at me now for leaving her there and excluding her from the vacation because my husband couldn't act like an adult. I told him my daughter was warned to stop, but she decided to test me, and now he's forcing her to stick to the custody schedule. Technically, I have her every other weekend, but he was letting her go back and forth whenever she wanted, and is now threatening to go to court for child support and back pay. So, am I in the wrong for grounding her for ruining the vacation?